What happens if you only level up Faith in Dark Souls 3? Hello everybody, welcome back. Papa Stream is here and we're going to find out. Before we begin, I'll quickly go over the rules of the run. Obviously, I can't level up anything but Faith, and since I already did an only miracle run for Dark Souls 3, this time around, there won't be any. And now that we're all on the same page, let's begin. But first, please consider subscribing as I'm trying to reach 12,000 subs by the end of the month, and it would be amazing if you could help me reach this milestone. And now, prepare your cocktails, ladies, and brace yourselves because you're about to see the most average Souls gameplay of your entire life. For those of you who may not know, Faith is the stat required to use miracles and pyromancies, but it also scales lightning and holy infused weapons while also slightly boosting your defenses against dark and other types of damage. After picking up the Titanite shard, I gave Gundyr a taste of my mace, and he must have enjoyed it quite a lot since he has Dex written into his name. Once I arrived in Firelink Shrine, I started speaking to the cutie that lives here.
Touch the darkness within me.
Are you sure, lady? I mean, we just met. Oh, you meant to help me level up. Of course, I knew that. Anyways, after pumping our first few points into Faith, I traveled to the high wall of Lothric, where I picked up the resins, the tits laying around, got the firebomb here and the ones on the roof, chucked them on the black sludge hollow to obtain the Titanite, I got the Estus shard and the cell key, picked up the rest of the goodies in the area, returned to Firelink to level up to +2, performed the tree skip for the bones, another Estus shard and the covetous silver serpent ring, and now we're ready to face Vord. Since all of the useful gems for Faith were all locked behind bosses, for now the resins would be the best options in terms of damage. Just place yourself underneath its cock and balls and start spanking him until he goes for phase 2. When he starts to go berserk, dodge towards him the first 2 charges, and if you have some balls, roll backwards on the third to get placed right under his legs to finish him off while he squirts around. I returned to Firelink Shrine and I infused my mace with the fire gem. Fire infusion, if you didn't know, similarly to raw, makes the weapon lose its scaling effects. I did this because for now, there were virtually no infusions to make my weapon scale with Faith, so increasing the base damage of a weapon that I couldn't scale with anyways seemed to be appropriate. Faith in the early game really isn't that viable, but let's hope we can change that. I said goodbye to Andre's greasy biceps, touched the darkness within the Firekeeper once more, collected some dirty cloth from Grandma, gee thanks, and I took to the skies to reach the next location. Once at the Undead Settlement, I made sure to talk to my brother Yhorm of London for the extra free levels and to start the quest for the secret ending. You get me, bruv. I used an alluring skull found nearby to distract the puppies and the crackheads raving on the block, and since most of the early enemies and bosses are weak to fire, the mace was putting in some good work. I got the small parry shield, collected Loretta's boner, got the Estus shard guarded by your mother, as well as the rest of the items in the area, making sure to pick up the fire clutch ring for a 10% increase to our fire damage. I made my way to the Crucifixion Woods and obtained another Estus shard, said goodbye to Jimmy and Jumbo, and traveled back to the shrine to have a chat with Yhorm and draw out my true strength with the risk of becoming beef jerky, and I returned to Florida to do some business. I got the rest of the Titanite shards needed for +3, the Estus shard and the bone hearts. Upgrading both my weapons and Estus was all good and dandy, but the true reason I was here was to pick up the Sage Coal, which unlocks Holy Infusion back at the blacksmith, while putting out the 3 fires to open up the next area for later. And finally got the ashes for infinite tits as well as a pair of very large ones and used them to upgrade to +4. If you didn't know, the Cathedral Evangelists, aka the Fat Witches, can drop holy gems, but the drop rate is abysmal, only a 0.5% chance. So instead of farming for hours and hours, I had a chat with Onion Bro.
I'm no coward and I've a steady hand.
Fought a fire demon with a fire weapon because me very smart, and I got the nudist ring as well as the weed ring. I got reminded why rats are the real bosses of these games, and unlocked the dilapidated bridge bonfire. Back in the shrine, I progressed Yoel's quest. Hope this ends well.
Hello, darkness.
What have I done?
I returned to the settlement to get the bone hearts along with the ashes. The fire mace was being really effective on the tree, busting his nuts quicker than a 14-year-old losing his V-card to his uncle. Huh, the great wood is actually a grower and not a shower. In order to get the Holy Gem, I would need to get to the Cathedral of the Deep, meaning the next target was going to be Crystal Sage. So after I was finished leveling up and upgrading my Estus, I paid a visit to the Temu version of Big Hat Logan. And as usual with this boss, I had my issues. Crystal Sage is always tricky when at low health. Like, I don't even know what the fuck happened here. Luckily, I had some good RNG, and after a couple of tries, I was able to defeat the boss. Before venturing to the Cathedral of the Deep to acquire the Fate Gem, I returned to Firelink to level up and progress Yoel's questline once again to get Uriah to spawn. I returned to the Deep, where I stared at a pair of giant dirty feet for a straight minute to pick up the large Titanite shard. Miyazaki would be proud. I unlocked all the shortcuts and finally got my hands on the Holy Gem. Took it back to Andre to infuse my mace and traveled to Antarctica to pick up the large Titanite shard sitting by the tree, as well as the one dropped by the crystal lizard who thought he could fly. I then traded another firebomb with Snuggly for another large tit and upgraded to +5. I transposed the Soul of Vort to obtain Pontiff's left eye that, thanks to its ability of recovering health with successive attacks, was going to be very useful for the Deacons. Our DPS for this fight was more than enough to handle the Holy Brothers. What else do you want me to say? It's the Deacons, guys. I returned to the Firekeeper to level up to increase the damage as much as possible because our next target was going to be... Dancer. And since the risk of getting one shot was very high, this wasn't going to be an easy fight and we will be needing all the damage we can get. She is weak to dark, so Faith wasn't obviously the best option. However, the mace is really good at staggering and the damage was still miles better than during my last challenge, so I was feeling confident. So here is me, no hitting Dancer, so I have something to show on my resume. With the hottest spot in all of Lothric finally down, I had access to the rest of the Lothric Castle area, where, among other things, I could obtain large Titanite shards by killing this knight near the bonfire, as they are a sure drop. After repeating this process 6 times, I could now upgrade my holy mace to +6. I returned to Lothric Castle to pick up the Titanite chunks laying around the area. One can be found just after the bonfire and more by just progressing the area. In order to not wake up the wyverns, I got the armor skip, make sure to be lightweight otherwise you'll break the armor, picked up the rest of the rocks I would need, and got reminded that everything can one-shot me here, so I would need to be much more careful. Much more careful. One good thing about leveling up Faith was that lightning urns would do some impressive damage. I killed the Puss of Man cursing the wyverns for more chunks and unlocked the elevator. Picked up some consumable souls, walked my way to the garden, and picked up the Estus shard and the rest of the chunks needed for +9. By now, I was reaching the second soft cap for holy infused weapons, and honestly the AR wasn't looking all that impressive. Luckily, it was more than enough to deal with the next couple of bosses, starting with the Watchers. Another good thing about holy weapons is that if you kill reviving enemies, well, they can't revive. I much preferred how skeletons worked in Dark Souls 1, where they would actually infinitely respawn unless the necromancer was killed, making killing them with blessed weapons that much impactful. Anyways, after getting the bone hard, I couldn't resist the urge to just not touch things, and I ended up fighting the biggest boner in the catacombs, breaking the bling blings like they were made of butter thanks to my blessed mace. He is also weak to these kind of weapons, but I doubt anybody will ever notice the difference. Finally, we have made it to Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. I killed Crocodile Dundee's nuts for the Pontiff ring, reached the Church of Yorshka, got the bone shard, and had some fine Estus soup. I hope the chef is okay.
Hello? Anyone there? Anyone at all?
Cuddled a bunch of dogs because they are the goodest boys and the best enemies in the game, as I said many times, and I finally got my hands on arguably the best infusion in the game, the lightning infusion. And this is where faith actually becomes worth it. But first I had to whoop Pontiff for the pain he made me endure on my first playthrough. 8 years later and I still haven't forgotten. Revenge wasn't the only reason Pontiff needed to be eliminated, as the giant coal needed for lightning infusions was placed in Anor Londo.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I collected the Estus shard found in the chest just outside Aldrich and returned to the shrine to give Andre the coal. And I made my blessed wet paper towel into an actual weapon. I returned to the first DLC and got my hands on the Titanite slab for plus 10, and now I was going to test the lightning mace on everyone's favorite anorexic crackhead down at the train station.
You ignorant slaves. Finally taken notice, have you, of the power of my beloved Ocelot, child of dragons?
Your son, Ocelot? Man, I think you smoked that child, cause I don't see it anywhere.
For he is all that I have.
Alright, whatever you say. Oceiros, being a somewhat malformed dragon, makes him extremely weak against lightning, like most bosses in these games, but that's another story. I know a lot of people struggle with this boss, but I found that if you just stay close, you can easily avoid most of his attacks. I abused his phase transition to put in as much damage as I possibly could. Luckily, he never did his stupid charge attack, and by just staying underneath his crotch, I was able to secure an easy first try victory. Once that was taken care of, I moved on to acquire Path of the Dragon, and I paid a visit to the best boss. Next up was the Dragon Slayer armor, and to my surprise, I learned that he actually isn't weak to lightning like I always thought. I mean, giant metal armor sounds like a pretty good conductor to me, but Miyazaki apparently doesn't think so. In order to beat DSA, I was going to need another infusion and another +10 mace, but I'm too lazy to do voiceovers for it, so a montage of all the items I would need will do.
Nice.
Oh, hello. Have you seen my companion, Horace? Yes, I see. Your spouse awaits you.
Give her this ring. I'll be sure to repay you in kind. Oh, hello, you're back. Goodbye.
Turns out that infusing another mace with dark to take advantage of the armor's weaknesses was as useful as a Bible in a strip club. Since dark infused weapons also scale with intelligence, attribute that I lack both in-game and in life. So I returned to the settlement to commit a crime, because apparently if you killed that funny guy named Aegon, and you exchange his shield with Snuggly, you can get a blessed gem? So apparently I could have gotten this the entire time as soon as I got to the settlement after Vort. Told you, I'm not that smart. Anyways, blessed seemed to be the best option. Let me just start by saying that DSA is one of the most fun bosses to fight in the entire base game. He can be very aggressive but leaves a lot of windows for attack opportunities. He even has some attacks that only need to be strafed around. After some hits, he will stagger, which is a good opportunity to get in some good damage. Watch out though, because his AoE is larger than it seems. When he goes into second phase is when you need to watch out, as he can easily one-tap with the amount of health we have. Luckily, I was able to stagger him, and thanks to his over-the-shoulder attack, I was able to land some good hits. I almost choked at the end, but blessed Miyazaki saved me from up there, and good thing I embered before the fight. And with 2 final R1s, the armor was defeated and we could now go for the endgame. The lightning mace carried me through the Lothric fight just fine, being the 2 brothers weak to lightning. For first phase, all you need to do is dodge to your right and hit. Wait for him to do whatever and repeat. If you keep it up, he will eventually stagger and you will finish him off with a nice riposte. In second phase, just panic roll through his sperm attack while also keeping an eye on where they will teleport. The rest of the fight is very similar to the first phase, with the occasional sperm projectile here and there. Also, positioning is a bigger focus here because you want to make sure to damage Lothric, so staying somewhat close to Lorien's back was essential. Once Lorien fell, we could take advantage of the reviving mechanic and animation to finish off the fight. I proceeded to place the 4 Lord Souls, watch the cool cutscene, and arrive to the kiln of the first flame where I will spend the next 2 hours fighting the final boss. And immediately I can tell you I was getting trash RNG on the build transitions. As the mage build is the easiest to deal with, it obviously seemed to never show up. I was constantly getting the cleric build, which is kind of fitting, but would ultimately leave me impaled on his giant spear. Sometimes he would even go for pyro, which is somewhat manageable to me, only to then fuck my tiny butthole with his flaming sword. Also, I fucking hate this attack. The delayed animation threw me off the rhythm so many times. To me, that is the worst attack in the entire moveset. The damage from the lightning mace was actually good, so I just suck. Anyways, after a lot of attempts, I could finally carve out a consistent strategy. Before wrapping up this run in a nice beautiful bow, there was something, or better speak, someone that needed to get a holy lesson in his holy behind. He doesn't need any introduction cause he's got no name. He's actually the kind of guy that, you never seem to grasp what his name is. And he usually comes with a chicken for some reason. If I have to be honest, the Turkey of Storm actually broke when facing my mighty lightning mace, needing only 3 hits to stagger and a repose to finish it off. Pathetic. For Nameless, I had to get rid of the Flint's Ring to gain some survivability, which saved my ass considering how the only time I got hit, I actually managed to survive it. But you don't care about that. You just want to see a badass fight with some badass music. So, well, here you go then. So, what does happen if you can only level up faith in Dark Souls 3 but can't use miracles? Well, you just realize how much better strength builds are and just go to sleep never to bother picking up a blessed gem ever again. In all seriousness though, I have to say that blessed damage did help a lot in some of the fights where lightning couldn't really do much. But after the halfway point of the run, lightning did carry the run. It's quite difficult to acquire both of these gems, which does create some inconveniences, and I will have to say though that it was fun experimenting with the different infusions, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you didn't, leave a like and a comment, and in the next one we are one-shotting every boss in Bloodborne, so bye!